2010, he graduated from the UCA Community Development Institute, where he currently serves as an advisory board member and guest speaker. In 2012, Scott joined the City of Conway as program manager for community development, overseeing multiple projects, including the acquisition and brownfield redevelopment of the former Conway scrap metal site, redesign of the Markham Street corridor, and a pocket-style cottage cluster, saying that real fast, housing development in the Pine Street neighborhood. In 2015, he joined the planning department as a planner over subdivision review. Prior to working for Conway, Scott was executive director of the Downtown Little Rock Community Development Corporation, where he was asset manager over multi-family housing and managed affordable housing development, receiving the 2010 Triumph Award for Innovation in Community Development from A-Change for a partnership developed with the U of A Fay Jones School of Architecture Design Build program. Scott still serves on the board of directors for the DLR-CDC, as well as vice president of the Arkansas Community Development Association, and president of the Lake Conway Point Remove Watershed Alliance. He has a wife of 20 years and 2 beautiful children. He loves spending time with his family, as well as fly fishing and rock climbing. Please join me in welcoming Scott Grummer.
You don't realize how wordy that is until somebody reads it off. I'm sorry about that. That may have been about half my presentation, so I'll try to shorten it down so we can make it a little quick. Thanks for having me here today. I appreciate that. And it's been a wonderful time here with the City of Conway for the last 3 years. And with limited time, I'm just going to kind of flow through this really quickly, but I want to start it off with a little video that I found on the internet just the other day. I thought it was really neat, since I'm a planner for the City of Conway, being able to speak to a group and give you a little something from a planning perspective.
Cities generate over 75% of the world's wealth. This attracts lots of people looking for a better future, but more people need more housing. Lack of affordable housing means that living in slums is often the only alternative. There is now an increased need for basic services. These services are often expensive and don't work well. The consequence? Diseases and epidemics become the norm. People need to earn a living. If they can't find regular jobs in their city, they will look for money somewhere else. Informal economies boom, as do illegal activity. Many cities currently follow a traditional urban planning with strict zoning. Residential over here, industries over there, commercial in the middle, more residential suburbs all around. The result is urban sprawl. Cities get wide. And wide means that people need to travel longer distances. How do they travel? Mostly by car. This results in huge jams. This slows down not only traffic but also the city's economy. Cities are big polluters. They account for as much as 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, the main cause of climate change. As a result, natural disasters and storms test the resilience of our cities more than ever. Loss of lives, destroyed property, and economic downturn are a global problem. In the face of all this, cities need to rethink themselves. Cities need to have a holistic, all-inclusive approach to their development, so as to accommodate more people and provide equal opportunities for all. So what is a city that works? Cities need to get their street grid right, with sufficient intersections to ease traffic flow, enhance access, and interconnect the city. Cities need to embrace mixed land use, become more compact, blending residences, offices, shops, amenities. This cuts the need for long commutes. Cities also need to get their social mix right, promoting neighbourhoods with a variety of housing types for all budgets. Well-planned cities increase their job numbers by 15% by being just that, well-planned. But cities need to look beyond this, providing the right incentives for the economic sector to thrive and focusing on providing jobs to the urban poor. Slums need to be upgraded and connected to the city, not only in terms of livability, but also socially, to create a strong overall social tissue and foster inclusivity. Universal access to basic services is paramount. Cities also need to provide enough land for public spaces, at least 30% of their footprint. Public spaces are vital for social exchange. They are spaces for leisure, fitness and culture, and where citizens interact. Cities need to free themselves from the dominance of cars by setting up attractive, affordable public transport systems and promoting non-motorised mobility such as walking and cycling. That will not only reduce congestion, but also help to curb pollution. Cities need to become greener to help alleviate the effects of climate change and provide a clean environment for their citizens. At the same time, cities need to become resilient to the increasing adverse effects of climate change. All this makes for a happy city.
Your habitat for a better urban future.
So, just a nice little short video. The city of Conway, back whenever I used to ride my bike through the streets here, was about 8,000 to 10,000, and now we're at about 60,000 and growing. So the question is, as the city continues to grow, we've seen a lot of development going on around the city of Conway. How do we grow? And nice video, but at the end it talked about green space, and one of the things that trying to figure out how we can engineer the city of tomorrow in order to be more efficient so that we can reduce costs in certain areas is our infrastructure. And the watershed, you'd think, what does infrastructure have to do with the watershed? Well, first off, a lot of people ask the question, what exactly is a watershed? But so this plan was put together by the University of Arkansas Community Design Center, the University of Arkansas Office of Sustainability, the City of Conway, and EPA, along with organizations in the region and outside the region, all the way up to Russellville and Little Rock. But what is a watershed? Well, basically anywhere where the rain falls and the rain runs off, it runs off somewhere. So that area, that basin that catches that rain, that's the watershed. So you'll find that there's an 8-digit HUC, which is the Lake Conway Point Remove Watershed, which encompasses all the way from Russellville to the north, all the way down to Mayflower and Lake Conway, which spills out into Palmer Creek. So this is the watershed which we're talking about, which this plan, the watershed itself was actually on EPA's list of impaired streams and impaired watersheds. So that's one of the reasons why they looked at having a study, because of the resulting impacts to the streams around it, and that remediation needed to be done. So why Conway? Well, Conway is one of the big contributors to the pollution that impacts the watershed because of the urbanization that's going around it. Conway's population is projected to grow by more than 25,000 to 88,000 by 2030. This entails more than 10,000 new dwelling units covering more than 3,400 acres if current density trends of 3 units per acre persist, which are the typical development style that's happened within Conway over the last several decades have been suburban style, which you can see on the fringes of the city impacts and causes the city to grow out. So how does this impact the city of Conway? Well, looking at green infrastructure and how we can start to integrate different types of green infrastructure rather than doing hard engineering and bringing in soft engineering by nature, and integrating that into the way that we look at and how the city has grown and developed out. So all of us are very familiar with building concrete culverts and piping water out. But is anybody in here that's driven around the villages at Hendricks and what they've done over there? When you integrate green development with that infrastructure, then you have remediation processes that actually can clean and filter the water that actually leaves the city and leaves the areas in which the water's coming from. So this development plan brings to the city of Conway a framework plan in which we can look at to integrate some of these processes to improve the way that we develop. So what are some of those? Well, we're very familiar with detention and retention. If some of you may not be familiar with this, but the city of Conway passed an ordinance back in 2006 that allowed developers in the city to pay a fee for retention to the city instead of doing it themselves. So they could pay the fee to the city and let the city handle the detention or retention processes. Well, it's found that those fees have been extremely small and not enough in order to cover the cost of doing the stormwater improvements for the city. So now we're looking at actually a stormwater utility to offset that. But there's processes that that we can look at to integrate in with the way that development is done by bringing in filtration, infiltration, and treatment into the developments, the parking lots, and all of that. So why? Well, when you look at our current stormwater infrastructure, if anybody's ever seen the flooding downtown, whenever we have serious events, it impacts a lot of businesses downtown. Well, the stormwater systems are not adequate enough in order to meet the needs of that stormwater runoff. How do we fix that? Well, this is a good example of bringing in some greenery, but we certainly want other methods in which we can fix it. So you look at reimagining Conway in ways in which we can not only help improve our stormwater runoff, but we can also filter it as it goes. So one of the projects that I was involved in was the acquisition of the Conway scrap metal yard. If you're wondering where that's at right now, we actually are in the process of, we have engineering design going on for the cleanup of that park, and we'll start, oh wow, time flies by. So we'll start the remediation on it probably late summer, but imagine if that park is utilized not only for a park, but it can be used for also stormwater detention and be used for multiple uses. So this is just a rendering that came out of the actual plan, but it gives us some ideas on what we can do when we can actually use stormwater retention techniques in the site just during those torrential rainfalls, and that can reduce some of the amount of water that's going downtown through the system and relieve the system so it doesn't impact the downtown businesses as much. And these are just other renderings that have come out of park space that could happen in the area. Again, these are architectural designs. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is what will be built, but it gives us the vision of what we could possibly look at. What are some of the strategies that we can use around the city? We have a lot of parking lots that have been built out. So if you just build a big parking lot, then the rain's going to hit it, it's going to run off, and it's going to impact and increase the amount of volume of stormwater that's traveling outside. So can we actually come in and retrofit? I mean, those are ways in which we can look at retrofitting our existing parking lots as well as the ones that are being developed and put in retention or detention bioswales, things in which can filter the water as it runs in and help it charge back into the ground and reduce the amount of stormwater that's actually running off site. These are things that we can partner with the developers of the city, and possibly we had a project that showed up about a month ago, and they had a large parking lot, and they didn't have room in order to do detention, and they said the cost was going to be over $400,000 and was excessive amount of, it was just way too much for them to actually do. So we looked at other methods. They ended up working with a local firm here, and they worked out some detention on site. But one of the options that we could have looked at, had enough time, was work with different methods in which we can give credits back to the developer for reducing their stormwater detention requirements by putting in low-impact development strategies on site. So these are things that we're going to be working with, trying to figure out the cost of the developer and the cost, but it also retrofitting existing. If you wanted to go in and cut, this plan actually gives instructions and methods in which you can go in and create these bioswales. If you've driven through the villages at Hendricks, a lot of people like that development. Well, that's just a good example of different low-impact development strategies. The plan also talks about our agricultural areas, not only around the city, but also throughout the watershed, ways in which you can look at having riparian corridors so that you actually do not have the runoff and the impacts on our streams, but you can actually can help farmers show ways in which they can design their agricultural to keep the cattle in more controlled areas so that it doesn't trample and doesn't impact the actual side walls and the streams itself. It improves the water quality for the watershed, and so examples. But one of the big things that as I wrap this up in the conversation of the plan, and this plan is online. You can go to cityofconway.org and look at it. And it's more extensive. It's extremely long. It goes into more detail. But one of the things that I saw out of this was our current development style with suburban style tract housing. when you look at integrating into the future and how can we grow, if the city of Conway can partner with developers and with landowners, and we could look at possibly master planning areas in which we can design it so it actually creates the housing types that the future is going to be looking at. We have industry trying to come in, we're trying to grow economically. So ultimately, if we don't have a diversity of housing stock, if you remember, I don't know if you heard it or not, but on the video that you listened to, one of the key components of providing affordable housing within cities is creating a diversity of housing. That diversity could mean single-family housing, it could mean townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, not just apartment complexes and other venues. So how do you design that so it's just not one thing, but you actually design it so you have multiple diversity styles of housing within an area that integrates park space and things that provide the atmosphere and the environment which people want to live, people want to walk, and people want to enjoy. This is a beautiful city. It's done a great job over the years developing where we are, but we're growing fast. And we've got to take a step and look, okay, if we want to improve the streams, if we want not to impact Lake Conway as much, because if you've ever been on the creeks during a torrential rainfall, you'll find, and actually it's found through EPA, that the first hour of runoff from stormwater runoff is more toxic. We have 2 minutes. It's quick. Is more toxic than raw sewage. And that's you can Google that and find that out. So, what do we have as a city? What responsibility do we have to improve that water quality as it goes downstream? And one of the things that we can look at is how we develop out into the future. But also partner with our developers, because these are costs that impact the cost of housing, the cost of business, the cost of doing business in the city. But ultimately, there are certainly ways in which we can look at. So the plan goes into that. This is actually the Stone Down Creek water treatment facility. Again, this was just a vision from the architectural school. But with the brownfield redevelopment that we're doing at the scrap metal yard, imagine if we did a brownfield redevelopment at the old treatment facility and created a park space that could be utilized by the city, whatever that may be. So why not make Conway a national model for reconciliation landscape between city and water? They actually did this. They received awards because of this design. It's actually in Venice, Italy right now, being exhibited at an exhibit in Italy. They're trying to make this a national model that other cities can adopt and can look at a low-impact development strategy. But that's my son. Kind of nice little, had to throw him in there. Kind of nice little bluegill on Stone Down Creek. So this is Stone Down right off of Dave Ward Drive. Nice little bluegill in there for whoever want to go fishing. But ultimately, these are the streams that we want to, that are assets to us and our community that impact the way that our city grows. So we want to take care of them, but most of all, how can we help? So the city is looking at plans for park space around, and they're trying to grow the streams. And I'm out of time now, and I'll close it down. But I want to thank you for letting me speak today. I encourage everybody to go on to the city website of cityofconway.org and look at the plan in full. And outside of that, if you have any questions, you can contact me anytime. And also, we're going in front of City Council next week on Tuesday to look at adoption of just the plan in general so that we can start looking at different strategies that the city can adopt. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's in your area or not, but in Conway, the Conway, where the new Conway Center is located, the drain area, prior to that going in, the creek running through there was such that big bush hog could go through once a year and keep it cleaned out. And if you look at it for the last, it's now, if you look at it when you go through it by the bowling alley through there, that is solid cover. And correctly, my perception is an open area, you let the water flow faster. The way it is now, you can slow it down, but it's going to stop it up, in my opinion, in terms of the drain for that whole area. If you keep going, if I'm correct in my assumption, it's going to be more expensive to have to go in and clear out all that land. brush and everything's been built up, big trees.
And those, and again, these strategies are not all perfect, and some of them need to be determined as to where's there more maintenance cost on the city. You don't want to impact the city when it comes to maintenance. You certainly don't want to slow down the water. I've seen water that's slowing down and it ends up flooding other areas, and you don't need that. So a lot of these strategies are actually simple strategies that can be utilized at the headwaters of where the water starts, upstream, not before it gets to the big areas. Those big areas, certainly when it starts to fill up, you want to keep those clean and keep those easy to run out. But these are more strategies that we can do inland before the water actually gets to a point like that. So there's a place for, certainly there's a place for keeping box culvert or whatever it is in order to run water. But what can we do to help slow it down before it gets there?
Scott?
Yes, sir.
Interesting presentation, by the way. I know one of the number one questions is going to be from developers. What's this going to do to our costs of development? So we have some numbers on that.
I don't have any numbers yet, and I've been meeting with developers personally, and I'm still going to continue meeting. The plan is to get together with developers in the city and look at the low-hanging fruit, the things that don't impact developers right now, and try to start studying the cost differences and what can and cannot we do. The most important thing is we don't want to impact the development. We want to partner with them and make sure that they have the ability to keep their costs down. But at the same time, if we didn't have a tree ordinance, where would we be today? And that was something that wasn't liked in some respects, but putting that in, it actually helped green up the city. The sidewalk ordinance, I'm not necessarily, there are things that work and things that don't work. There are places where we need it, places where we don't. I think we have to come together as a community and we have to determine where and what works. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What happens in this case, a lot of times, is we have a developer that has a certain given area of property that we want to develop, especially on a super large tract like we're showing the tract. And what you would ultimately try to do is take the same density you can get on that creek and the lower picture that has the normal traditional housing pattern. Take that same density and through creative alternate housing styles, push that density into areas where it's got your high ground, and leave the low ground green. So they ultimately wind up with the same number of units. Hopefully they'll wind up with less infrastructure to a certain extent on a lot of roads and things like that. But on the municipal side of it, once those roads are built and turned over to the city has to deal with them. There'll hopefully be a lot less roadway infrastructure to deal with on that basis. So that's
And that's what this was for. The density here was a little over 700 houses. This is more density than that, so it creates options that actually provides different venues for the developer to make money in ways that they wouldn't have been able to down here. So it's about coming up with ways in which we can design it to be more impactful for the community as well as for the developer.
Thank you.